let's bring in political analyst and author John Matisonn. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So there is much concern, of course, around the world, given the full-blown trade war between the world's largest economies, China and the US. Let's get then the very latest. Now China has sent out a tourist alert to all its citizens traveling to the US. So let's start there. Just your reaction around this.
Well, look, the other issues, the trade issue is the big issue. The risk alert that China has just sent out is a relatively minor thing. It's a bit of an insult to America. It's also a reference to the fact that there are foreign students in America who are not safe at the moment. In one state, there was a new rule about restricting Chinese academics in the universities. So those things will affect people, individuals here and there. But the really big thing is that China is now said it's fighting this to the end and they won't back down. And you have to look at the relative strengths. All the other countries that Trump has attacked with these tariffs, they'll fight back, they can win some battles, but it's tough for them because America is so much stronger than them and many of them are really dependent on America. In China, it's different. China has been preparing for this a long time. They've reduced the amount of trade they have with America. The effect on Chinese economy of America is small. I mean, it's obviously damaging and they don't want this and they've been clear about it. But they say we're now in this to the end, and I think that's something for the Americans to really worry about.
And I mean, just let's look at the full-scale implications here across the globe. I mean, the latest phase of of Trump's sweeping global tariffs has already taken effect. What do these aggressive tariffs look like, and how will they impact on the African continent, particularly economies like South Africa, and of course, quite concerning, the tariff that was imposed on a smaller market like Lesotho, as an example?
Right. Well, look, this has caused a global economic crisis. There's a real chance of recession. Some serious economists are really even pointing to the possibility of depression. So this is very serious, and it's serious for all sorts of countries: Canada, Europe, Australia, Vietnam, and of course in Africa. The vulnerable countries are generally the most vulnerable, and of course there are quite a few in Africa. And as you say, Lesotho is the perfect example. It's being used in the American press as the example to show how really absurd what Trump is doing is, because he has this idea that he shouldn't be buying more from any country than America sells. Well, in Lesotho, how would that work? It makes no sense. Lesotho makes clothing, jeans, denim jeans, things like that, and they sell them to America. What do you expect them to buy? Tesla cars? It doesn't make any sense, but it will be very damaging for poorer African countries like Lesotho. It'll damage us too in South Africa. As you know, I mean, it effectively is worse than the problems we were worrying about by losing AGOA.
And I mean, I want to go back to, of course, the main reason for this interview, and those, of course, the China issuing that risk alert. You speak, of course, about the dangers of these tariffs and the implications thereof. I mean, we are talking about, when we look at US and China here, this is a $600 billion relationship and partnership. But the risks are there, particularly for those Chinese citizens who will be traveling to China, just given the heightened anxiety and the tensions. What should they be looking out for? And I mean, how great a risk is this for ordinary Chinese citizens going to the US, as an example?
Well, if you look at the warning that the Chinese government issued, they point to specific issues. They say you must look at the conditions in the place you want to go to. There are a few states that are taking specific action to restrict Chinese academics and so on, and there could be places where they could be specifically vulnerable. But generally, I wouldn't exaggerate the importance of this. I mean, remember, both sides, neither side is being naive. China has a real chance of winning the war, the publicity, winning the battle for world opinion, because America's actions here are so absurd and cruel and unnecessary and unthought through, that China has seen a real opportunity. So I agree with you. There could be cases where a few Chinese will be genuinely vulnerable, but I don't think that's going to be widespread. And by putting out this warning in a way, China is saying, we've finally arrived at the big table. China is now a superpower as big as America and big enough to take you on and even beat you.
But John, also at the back of course, states like Ohio passing the Higher Education Act, there are those concerns then on the actual students, Chinese American students who are very concerned in terms of what these repercussions could mean for their safety and for them. And then you have incidences where you are hearing people being stopped once they enter the US and being turned away, even though they've got legitimate reason and cause to be there with the correct documentation. So those fears are now probably also going to be escalated because of this risk alert.
Yeah, well, yes. Look, there's no doubt, as you say, in Ohio they've changed the rules, and people will be vulnerable. I don't see, I just want to make a distinction. I'm not saying they're going to be mass arrests of Chinese tourists in America. I think that would be an exaggeration. So I don't want to spark excessive fear. But I mean, this whole thing is unpleasant in every aspect, and there's real cruelty in it. And of course, if you're Muslim or you support the Palestinians in Gaza, those kind of visitors are under real threat. They've even arrested some and deported them. And of course, in those cases, very serious. I think that's more serious for visitors to America than Chinese, but Chinese students will be put out. Maybe some will be expelled. Certainly, if they've been promised a place in a university and so on, the Chinese government is correct in saying, just check the local conditions, make sure that the rules haven't changed, that the people who've invited you or accepted you still want you. Be very careful so you don't get caught up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, for your time and your reaction. Political analyst and author John Matisonn.